what's your name?
I'm Larry Williams.
Larry Williams.
Number 3 piano player in the house.
Yeah.
They never let me forget that.
How long have you been in Austin?
I've been here 72 years now. I came here when I was less than a year old. And my younger brother, Ron, was born here. He's the only member of my family other than my son, who was born in Texas. Everybody else was born. My older brother, Nat Jr. and I were born on the University of Iowa campus. Family home really is Nashville, Tennessee, right there on the Cumberland River.
So what was it like growing up in Austin?
It was a house of music and arts and crafts, a lot of arts and crafts. My mother, whenever she got a chance, she tried to introduce us to a lot of craft type stuff related to art, making puppets, doing a lot of stuff with making little small busk of people and stuff like that. I had a busk of Abraham Lincoln that I put in the kiln and fired, and I thought just a stunning job on Abraham Lincoln, you know. But there was a lot of music going on in the house. Mostly, we lived on 11th Street, right there by I-35. And it was right across the street from Sam Houston, which was kind of like a playground for us, you know, coming up. There was a lot of young people in the neighborhood. 11th Street had a big rivalry with the kids right over there. 13th Street, you know, we threw rocks at them and they threw rocks at us, you know. We rolled tires down on them, they rolled tires back. We BB guns and all that kind of stuff, you know. Played, you know, football with them, we beat them, and then they throw more rocks at us, and then we go back up there, and then they beat us, and then they throw bigger rocks at us. Pretty soon, what you might think of as street gangs did develop in the neighborhood, but there was some group of soldiers that came in from Fort Hood, Texas, about 15 of them, and they changed that neighborhood. And there's a whole big story on that. And it was very intimate. They taught everybody the real rules of baseball, boxing, basketball, and how to just deal with each other on a day-to-day basis, you know. And those people, they stopped all of the quote-unquote street crime for about I would say 4 years. They policed the soldiers from Fort Hood. They come in every weekend and they hunt everybody down. They make us play football the right way, baseball the right way. They would literally come out and create a baseball field, and they'd umpire. You know, if you cheat, they would beat you. They walk up to you and they hit you on your doggone shoulder. You only need 2 or 3 of those, and from then on, you're doing whatever they want you to do. A lot of that. They taught us about quick discipline and how to treat each other. And then they all just kind of, some of them went away, and one of them married my mother after, you know, later on in life, you know. My mother she grew up on a farm right outside of Nashville in Franklin County, Franklin, Tennessee, which was like a crossword for all the farmers in the neighborhood. This is my grandfather right here, Felix Lawrence. And I'm sorry, this is tough. Okay, because all these people except for this, my Uncle Lige, they're all gone. He's the only one still alive. He lives in New Haven, Connecticut. He lives right outside of, same neighborhood with Joe Lieberman, guy who ran for vice president. Okay, this is my Uncle Herman right here. He was a very quick-sighted man. He'd see something, he'd take you on an adventure in the middle of the night, coon hunting, you know, 8 dogs and 2 shotguns and 15 kids running after all of them, you know, and couldn't see a dadgum thing in the dark, you know. You're running through the Tennessee woods at night, you know, telling what you might run. I ran into a couple of trees. You run away from what's out there, and they were hunting coons, but you run into everything out there. My grandmother was, her mother was this is my grandmother Effie. Her mother was a slave. Who came up from Mississippi with a white doctor, and they came up following the army of Tennessee. Her mother was she was like what do you call those things? A midwife. Like I said, she never was able to vote. in Tennessee because her mother was a slave, and her whole life. My Uncle Frank made it to Chicago, opened up a limousine service, big money, big money. Aunt Ann was a powerful seamstress. She taught everybody how to sew, especially the kids. She taught the kids how to make quilts, country-style quilts. And that paid off for me in life. I started sewing, not clothes, but I did maintenance on everything that I had. My mother taught speech and drama. She went to Tennessee State. She came to Austin with my father. Had, like I said, had two kids in Iowa. Third son right here in Austin. She taught speech and drama, and she taught at University of Texas and Stephen F. Austin, Nacogdoches, Huston-Tillerson. But she loved HT. On my dad's side of the family, this is my old man right here on the corner here. My grandmother, Virginia Frazier, came out of Shaw University. She was a real good friend of Dr. I say Z, it was C, but it's Z. Luby, Z. Alexander Luby, who was like first black city councilman in Nashville. Did a lot with the integration in Nashville. Connie, here is my cousin. My father had a brother right here who is Uncle Charles. Uncle Charles went to Tuskegee. Pop came out of Fitz. Uncle Charles wanted to be a Tuskegee airman. He didn't know it till he got to Tuskegee. He thought he could be, but he was flat-footed. And if you go up on a plane, and all that kind of stuff, and they didn't let him do that. They mustered him out as a Tuskegee airman, but he became an engineer. He was really good, a Booker T. Washington kind of guy. That's why he was at Tuskegee. He was really attracted to that kind of stuff. He taught arts and crafts at Pearl High School in Nashville. And all of the Pearl kids, year in, year out, they still praise, oh man, yeah, we heard about him and all the stuff he did with arts and crafts in the school, But he was an engineer with Patton during the war. He was building bridges and stuff like that, pontoons and all that kind of thing. He was part of that whole cadre of Red Ball Express, that supplied and resupplied the army moving from North Africa all the way to Berlin. And but he and my pop, they hooked up in Italy. After Patton and those guys invaded Sicily and all that stuff and came in, my pop was already from North Africa too in Italy, and they just kind of stayed together for a long time. So what Patton did during the war was create an integrated military band. And he used just regular Joe soldiers who were already musicians, and black, white, Mexican American, all kinds, and klezmoric soldiers, they must have had a good band. I never heard it. But for years there would be all kind of reunions and stuff like that going on. But we learned a real historically in-depth appreciation for music worldwide. My mama loved stage plays and all of the music that went with that. The King and I and all kinds of stuff. So Carol Channing music was always in the house, Dinah Shore. She also had a flair for fashion. She wound up being a buyer for Snyder Chenards on the drag. And so she would go back and forth all over the place, all over the world. Buying all kinds of, she loved Oriental art and music and dress, culture. My older brother, first black in the Longhorn band, which tells me one thing, which we already knew. You had to be able to sight read at age 7 coming out of the house. Papa wasn't a really good teacher for young kids at that age. But I'm at Blackshear Elementary School right across the street from HT, Huston-Tillerson, and Mr. Patterson was over there. Alvin Patterson was teaching at that time, elementary school. And his big thing was you don't just play music, you have to understand what happens with it. So we had to learn how to write it and read it real quick, real fast. And that stuck with us the whole time. So by the time my brother got to UT, he was rearranging the UT fight song. And we both did jazz ensemble at UT and all that kind of stuff. But our keyboard was something I liked for a little while. I didn't like music teachers in the elementary school. I hated them. I hated it like you would not believe. I tried to avoid it. There was no way to do it. We had 2 pianos in the house. One of them, mostly it was students playing it, and the other one was in the living room. You don't play it unless you ask somebody. And generally, I never got a chance to play that much in the house, so I took up playing on pots and pans. I love drums. I played drums in elementary school, junior high, and I was going to be a drummer at Austin High School, and they said, that means you got to really get up every morning and clean drums. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, I switched to clarinet because it was fun to play, and I played flute, guitar, that kind of thing. But coming up, my father taught us to, everybody had to play the violin. You had to play the violin, and I hated the violin. But I hated it. But my older brother was very proficient at that kind of stuff, and he started writing symphonies about age 12. And I thought he was nuts. But later on in life, I began to realize that he knew what he was doing. He left UT, went to Seattle, was a scriptwriter for Quincy, up there, Quincy Jones, for about 4 or 5 years, and he left there and went to, this is tough because I didn't see him too much after he left. After he left college, after the kids got killed at Kent State, my brother said, forget college, I'm out of school. And I was a government major at UT, and I began to realize my teachers were out there leading the demonstrations. But I had to keep track of my brother on campus because from 1968 was panic in my life. When Dr. King got killed, when they killed Bobby Kennedy, I thought this world was going to come unglued. But the only person I could keep contact with was my older brother, and he had already decided that he was going to leave and he was going to join the United States Army before he got drafted. So he went straight in Officer Candidate School, became a Russian translator. Why Russian? Because he was crazy about Rimsky-Korsakov, and Tchaikovsky. He just loved that kind of stuff, So he went into and cryptography was not a problem for him. You see what I'm saying? Because he looked at symbols for music and he just picked out all that kind of stuff. But that was because my father was constantly literally beating us over the head with there's some structure in everything you do with music, regardless of whether it's jazz. You got to understand what the structure is. I heard that every day. And not just from him, but pretty soon I'm hearing it from his kids, from the students. And they were always, the students at HT were always at our house. And the house opened up for them at 8 o'clock every Saturday morning. And it would close for them at 8 o'clock at night on Saturday. That was the rule. The kids had 12 hours to do whatever they wanted to do at my mama's house. And so they came in there, and I'm talking about usually about 10 at a time. There's the only place they could practice as a combo or a small ensemble. So we had concerts going on all the time. And then the whole neighborhood showed up on Sunday because they'd do it all over again. I love that kind of stuff. I hated when they practiced it, but I liked the concerts because there was a lot of food. That's the truth.
So it seems like there's this kind of reoccurring thing that I'm aware of, is that this sense of the schools when they merged, and the sense of community that was there, where it wasn't just during the day at school, it was the neighborhood, it was in people's homes.
Right.
It was this sense
in the churches, all of that was woven into the fabric of the HT mosaic, arts and crafts, music. But it mostly was the music at HT that Everybody loved this man, Bert Adams, who had been a band director at Sam Houston. He came out of Wiley. Okay. And his house is still over here on right off of Oak Springs. You know, when you get up on the top of the hill right there past Texcan Academy, the next thing you're gonna see is 2500 Rosewood. That's Bert Adams' house. And we spent a lot of time going from 11th Street over there, back and forth all the time. Because that's what these two guys, my father and Bert Adams, are always doing stuff in tandem. Before they merged and after they merged. I don't remember anything that happened when the two schools merged because I'm 4 years old. But from like 1960 till about 1985, there was no way to get away from it. The school was helping everything to flourish in the community. And all of the people who were working as educators, they either came out of HT or they were doing something dynamic on HT's campus. But Bert Adams started Band Day for black colleges and high school bands to come to Huston-Tillerson. Band Day was like right before commencement. And then you're talking about all of the bands would come out of Houston, Dallas, East Texas, that kind of thing, you know. Down below San Antonio, West Texas, and those high school bands, they made Austin really the music capital of the world. Seriously, back in the '60s, before those bands dissipated with desegregation, you know what I mean? But those bands were top-notch bands. By the time they got to HT's campus, I began to realize that not only are these students serious, but they're well crafted, and they know they're going to be back here next year and doing the same kind of thing. So they got to keep that wrap up. You couldn't beat that. You couldn't beat that in Austin because that was. And on Friday nights, on that one Friday night when they were in town, they were at Rosewood Park. You're looking at about maybe 200-300 high school students in stage bands. They're playing for the entire community. That was, for me, that was the top. You couldn't beat that. I thought that was, I can't say it I can't say it because you'd have to hear it to understand what I mean. You have to see it to realize that they made everybody want to play something and do something. Those are the real heroes, you know.
So you've seen Austin for decades. You've seen how things have changed. You've lived and grown up in East Austin. How have things changed? Where do you think things are going?
Okay, the fault lines are still there in the community. And that the fault lines, for me, I define those as fear. A disconnect between communication. Everything below 7th Street still is below 7th Street. Everything west of I-35 is still over there. Clarksville is still a little subset of what's going on over there, but it's changing like everything else. But the promise of the future that I see is comes out in your generation. Your generation. What are you about? You're not 45 yet. But see, that's what I'm talking about. Your peers are going to change and been changing everything since time you got out of high school. Y'all changed everything. Y'all changed the language and the culture and the reasons why we have to move at a different technological pace, which is I'm still trying to keep pace with, because it's moving so fast. And y'all speak what is an algorithm? Y'all speak a completely different language, and you have a culture that is much more compelling, because it not only is it an integrated culture, it's flourishing as in a way that even though there's problems, y'all gonna rise above. Y'all rose above Trump. you know, and y'all got some more thresholds to reach in that my generation never even dreamed of. We were a maintenance group. We were disconnected from our parents, disconnected from the future, and some of us are still there like that, you know. But y'all took quantum leaps into a completely different, wonderful realm. And music is part of that, you know, my God.
And I think a part of that is there's been something that's been instilled through generations of people that sometimes this one generation isn't able to go the full distance, but they instill that in the next generation.
Yeah.
Because that same, I think, determination, that same sense of determination to just overcome,
Yeah.
it's still there. That was, you know, after emancipation, I really believe. And obviously with this society that is way more integrated than it's ever been, even though there's still ways to go.
It's integrated and it's also eclectic at the same time. You know, you got so many different wonderful ways to go. And my generation got fatigued with kind of dealing with the same kind of thing for 20 years. We just kind of moved around like a lost tribe. After the Vietnam War, man, I don't remember anybody that came out of my neighborhood. You know, I haven't seen anybody who came out of my neighborhood from time I'm 20 years old until I'm maybe 60 years old. You know, you see what I'm saying? And that's a major tragedy.
There was a lot of changes that happened.
Yeah, that kind of a disconnect was too much. Yeah.
So, you know, we think about HT. I think 146 years. You know,
I can't believe that. It just doesn't seem like it's that old. And when I first heard that HT was the oldest educational institution in higher learning in the city, I was 50 years old when I found that out. I had no idea about it, no concept of that. I just always thought that, and I never felt that it was an inferior school because I knew better. I knew better in the sense that all of my upcoming was not only dealing with. My grandmother was a real big thing on it. She was a teacher at Pearl High School, and she taught at the American Seminary in Nashville. Martin Luther King was one of her students. And when she had a reception at the house, you know, I got to see continental educators. You see what I'm saying? And I never thought that they were inferior to anything. As a matter of fact, I felt that they were so distinguished individually, one by one, I couldn't figure out who was cooler than who. They were all they were just distinguished. They all had a way of moving around the planet, and the HT students, same way. By the time I got a chance to really understand what was going on with HT students, by the age 10, on Friday afternoons, they're all dressed to the nine. I'm talking about all, and then later on in life, I'm beginning to realize some of those kids that I saw graduated HT, they are superintendents of the schools in Beaumont. You see what I'm saying? And then the other people are coming back to me and telling me, you know, he went to HT, man, and he's in Who's Who magazine. He's donated millions of dollars back to the school, you know. I started paying attention to them when I was by age 15 to realize that, I hadn't seen a whole lot of black college campus, but I began to realize that there was something particularly special about it that was bigger than anything else in my world. And I still go back to campus. It's a small campus, but when you go back and look at it again, you begin to realize it's one of the most. And Dr. Urban, who came on later in life, he rehabilitated the campus landscape, and I think what scared my grandmother so much for an entire generation was accreditation for black colleges. You know how they come in and they get in trouble and they getting ready to disappear. HT has never been threatened by that, and I hope that never does happen. I was a student at HT for 2 years. My freshman and my sophomore year, I was able to go to HT because my father taught there. I didn't have to work for tuition. But when then my dad he left campus and he had to go to back to McAllister in Minnesota to work on his PhD, and he was away from school for my last 2 years. And then they looked at me, Mama, and sat me down and said, Larry, you're gonna have to leave school. And I said, well, where am I gonna go? And she said, we don't know. You know, your dad is leaving that way, and you know, Mom and Daddy weren't together then, and my mama couldn't afford it for me to go to school. So I wound up working at Church's Chicken, right there on Manor Road. You know where that right now it's a taco place. You know, I worked in the chicken kitchen for 2 years and put myself through UT. And UT wasn't a challenge. It was not an educational challenge at all. College for me, by the time I got to UT, it was like, oh God, here we go again. Talking about economics and all that kind of stuff. The only problem I had with UT was trying to find a building and trying to figure out was I in the right line and trying to find a place to park. I was not challenged as much as I was at Huston-Tillerson. My profs at HT, especially I was majoring in government. They were, not only was I getting individualized instruction by them, I was getting individualized, compassionate instruction and communication from them. I had a Dr. Burbano who was from the Philippines. At HT, he taught government, and the thing what he did was, okay, I want my whole government class is going to be part of the Model United Nations, students from around the world. Okay, we're going to be the Nigerian embassy to the Model United Nations right there when they were having the war with Biafra, and none of us spoke Yoruba or any of the other languages that are in Africa, Swahili. None of that stuff. We thought we knew what we were doing. Everybody had Afro and looked Afrocentric, but we didn't understand Africa. Okay, had no concept of where it was, really. And we didn't know anything about the angst, the push and the pull that was going on. I couldn't believe they were having a civil war in Africa, in Nigeria, one of the most prominent countries in the African world. And by the time we got to the Model United Nations as a delegation, I'm the ambassador to Nigeria. I didn't ask for that. When you get drafted, and other people had other little jobs too. But we're sitting there with other kids from all over the world, and they're speaking. What are they speaking? They're speaking languages that we don't know about. Because that's culture shock. Coming off a college campus, and we had no idea what our role was, but we had to fish and find. And by the time we got back to campus 6 weeks later, we thought we could run the world. Had enough self-esteem amongst us, and we had enough cohesiveness to really go back to campus, and we changed the student government. And but Rafael Aponte Hernandez was a philosophy professor at HT that taught me a lot about Descartes, and I kept wondering why I was thinking, He sparked my world big time. I had a Catholic nun, a white Catholic nun, Mary Margaret Doyle. And I don't see her in any of the pictures, but y'all need to get a picture of Mary Margaret Doyle, Mary Doyle. Because when Martin Luther King got shot, and everybody wanted to go out and do something destructive and all that kind of stuff, you know, and just rebel, rouse and all that. She grabbed the whole student body, took us to the state capitol grounds, same day, that next day. And we stayed on campus, we stayed on the capitol grounds praying all day. Can you imagine 300 students just sitting there walking to the campus? And she had a, I'm not gonna say a calm effect, she had a centering effect on us, you know? She made us realize that, okay, there's chaos and there's failure, but it's not fatal. And you still have a place, a role, something to do in the world. And she wanted me to go to Notre Dame. And she kept saying, you need to leave here and go to Notre Dame. And it sounded cool to me, but no. I wanted to stay in Austin because I was too afraid to leave home. And I knew it was the wrong time to leave because I was scared of everything that was happening out in the outside world. But I'm saying that the HT kept those students grounded when everybody else in the world was wild in the streets. Does that make any sense? Okay, and I'm saying they kept that, the HT students, the kids I really wound up graduating with, the class of 71, coming off that campus, they were cooler than we were at UT. They were still cooler than we were at UT. And some of them, I thought I was going into the ministry. A lot of them did go into the ministry. A lot of them did go into the civil rights movement. They went flush into the civil rights movement, and they changed their communities. I didn't do that. So I'm a hippie at UT, and all I want to do is just be degenerate. You see what I'm saying? I want to do the same thing everybody else is doing. I want to stay out of school. I want to get mad and run around and do all the other. No, that was a waste of time. So I graduated, but when I graduated from college, nobody came from my family. Because it was just, I graduated and go back to work at Church's Chicken. You see what I'm saying? I'm graduating from college, University of Texas, same day I go back and work in the kitchen. And I don't remember the commencement address, none of that stuff, but I remember a whole lot of commencement that they had at HT coming up. And I valued all of those. What I valued at HT more than anything else was not getting kicked out of school. Who saved me when I was at UT was a black college professor who came to campus at HT, Dr. Henry A. Bullock from Texas Southern. Okay, he came to teach at University of Texas. And I was comfortable with him coming because I recognized his scholastic acumen immediately. You know, I began to realize, oh, wow, there's somebody I can not only recognize, I can gravitate to. On a one-to-one basis, I became his teacher and assistant because, why? Because he said, Mr. Williams, you're gonna flunk my Negro history class. You're failing in Negro history. It was a shock for me. Why am I failing? Because I didn't take it seriously. He's talking Negro. I thought I knew American history for the Negro. I did, but he wasn't teaching that. He's teaching American history, Negro history for the world. You see what I'm saying? And I didn't read the books. I didn't take him seriously until I almost got kicked out of school. But then he made me a teaching assistant, and next year I aced his class after I took this class over again. I went back to my old acumen of scholarship study, that kind of thing, because at UT it was a party. I didn't take UT seriously after '68. You see what I'm saying? And he took me seriously enough to save my behind. And I'll never forget that. He died before I was able to just let him know that I'm still kicking. But he introduced me to one book that I think everybody needs to read. That's John Hope Franklin. John Hope Franklin's book on the history of the African American. Big, thick book. And John Hope I didn't realize until just this past 2 weeks ago that he came out of Tulsa. Did you know that? John Hope Franklin is the leading Negro historian during that period in college life. He was a leading authority. But his world began in Tulsa. Right after he's the descendants of the people who got burned out. You see what I'm saying? And so there is a chain, a thread running through Negro life that we are still trying to catch up with, man. And it's scary as hell. You know.
So just like that experience of being at a HBCU, which
HT for me meant being around quintessentially well-studied, well-crafted educators, students, administrators, and teachers.
And that seems pretty consistent with a lot of other HBCUs throughout the country.
Yes.
This
Yes.
attention that you get
Yes.
from the staff, from the faculty,
right.
that, at a big school,
Right.
UT, it's not there, there's so many people. With all that kind of...
I lost myself at UT. I lost my identity, but as soon as I hit campus, and then I knew about it. I rooted for the team, but by the time I got on campus, I had no concept of who I was. It's like somebody just ripped it away from me. You see what I'm saying? Or I just gave it away. I had to go get it back.
And
I'm still having to go get it back.
And so when we think about how HBCUs kind of came into being, it was to kind of raise the Black Americans to a higher elevation,
right?
From
slavery.
From slavery,
right? Up from slavery.
So you think about this amazing.
Here's what I think about. I think about W.E. Du Bois. I think about Booker T. Washington. All of the other, and everybody else was activists. These two guys, they were in the salvation for the culture. You see what I'm saying? Everybody else was like, was leading a movement or a march or something like that, or a burn baby burn and all that kind of crap, But those guys were saying things like the salvation of the Negroes in books. It's in learning about your real culture. It's about building an attitude of umbrella consciousness in the community to live enterprise, small business. See, that's where all you had up and down 11th Street during that time when HT was in his was flourishing in the 60s. They had black businesses that are not there no more. You know what I mean? They're all gone. And nobody wants to, and people are coming slowly trying to get back into it on 12th Street, but not really. And but HT remains the flagship for everybody in Austin. If you take away HT, then you got a real problem. Even though there's not a whole lot happening on campus like that because of the pandemic, it's still ever present in your life. And I feel that same way about Carbon Museum, except it's smaller. HT's bigger and better.
So just going back to this kind of crucial role that HBCUs have served for well over almost 150 years in many cases. In 2021 now, there's about only 100 accredited HBCUs. Many times there's a lot of the issues being finances. From here, what needs to happen to make sure that these schools, other HBCUs throughout the country, survive and kind of continue this long history of rising above.
I think it should be something like a World's Fair. All of these, and Atlanta is a place, okay? And I saw a Black Expo in Atlanta one time, and I had never been, I've only been there one time, but they were having a big Black Expo. All of businesses from all over the world, Black businesses were coming together to have like a small World's Fair in Atlanta at the same time I was there. With the concept of educational excellence, all those Black colleges need to have not just a symposium, they need to have a month-long exhibit of all of the things that makes them valuable to family life in the United States. Not just Black families, but all families in the United States. What we've done and what we can do to make it flourish better and enrich it and make it stronger. Because Black colleges have the resiliency. They've had, somebody's thrown so much stuff at them, and adversity. I mean, you know, and they've still managed to flourish. Where the field itself, my grandfather would say, the field is fallow. You can't cultivate anything on this kind of field. You know, in the United States, they managed to cultivate something that was against all the odds in the world. People still trying to put them down, and even more so now, they still flourish. I'm saying they're growing when they're not supposed to be growing. And there's like
I think a common misconception that you need to be Black to go to HBCU.
Oh, I had that concept. Then I had the culture shock to realize that maybe the most of the student body, I would say maybe 30 to 45% of HT students are not Black. They're international students from all over the world, Asian, Mexican American, you know. And I've dealt with a lot of Austin Community College type stuff. You see what I'm saying? But what makes it attractive for them to go to a college campus like that still is the same basic thing. They get that individualized education, recognition, compassion, and inspiration at the same time that you can't get from no place else because you've been isolated everywhere else you go to in the world. And but in HT, not only do you have the acceptance, you have the embrace. Everybody on campus they're dealing with the same challenges as students, and it doesn't matter what race or color you are. You are getting something there that you probably can't get no place else on the planet. And I think that's not only a good thing, but it's the best thing. HT is Dr. James Means, biology teacher. Okay, his wife, she came in, Bertha Means came in and changed everything. She took all of the kids and integrated everything. With my mama, they put blinders on and went out and integrated every damn thing in the world that they could find. You see what I'm saying? And that's Huston-Tillerson University, okay? And I can't say that loud enough. I'm trying to tell you they did that. You understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.